and that stuck with me.
Oh, sadly, it's the unwritten, one of the unwritten rules in an alcoholic home is don't trust.
Don't trust.
Never trust.
Don't trust anybody, because you don't know what's going to happen. So I never did, really, until I met Christ, and he said, you're going to have to trust me. I've got a plan for you. And I didn't know what it was, but I said, I'm in. Let's go for it and see what happens.
Unconditional love. I think of the anger in your home as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Just to come into this love.
Well, it was overwhelming for me, the unconditional bit, because love always had a price tag. It was either, you know, it was finances, it was adultery, it was other women, it was, you know, my father, you know, and my mum to some extent. Just, there was always something around this sort of love. It was just angry love, you know, and then glimpses of happiness, but always reverting back to the anger.
Well, then, to be invited to take on leadership for a new program of Alpha.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I stumbled into it, really. In 97, I went on staff at Holy Trinity Brompton as a pastor. And Sandy Miller, who was the vicar then, said, Paul, I don't know what we're doing with this prison work. We haven't had a prison ministry before. Alpha seems to be skirting around the edges of the prisons. What do you think? And I said, well, give me a crack at it. Let's see what happens. You know, my military mind took over.
You could strategize in your mind?
I thought we can get a map, we can strategize it. How many prisons in the UK? 162. Is Alpha in? It was in 1 or 2. Let's do them all. Let's go for it. Let's work out. And I put dots on a map slowly as Alpha started to grow and men in prison became Christians. And then they started to promote it as they moved around. And I just followed them, really. So that's how it started to grow.
And where is it today?
Well, through the grace of God and some amazing volunteers who work with the Alpha program. It's in the UK. We've got 162 prisons still, and Alpha's in about 130 of them. And in 86 countries around the world, it's operating in the prison systems.
86 countries. I'm looking here at a statistic of the 13,280 offenders currently incarcerated in Canada. 74% will be released back into the community.
Yeah.
You're concerned about them as well.
I am. The recidivism rates are horrendous. I think globally it's about 89% in all the prisons around the world. Something like 8 or 9 million people in prisons, but the reoffending rate's about 89%. It varies in different countries. So that's about 9 men out of 10 men in a room will go back to prison within a 2-year cycle, and it's horrendous. So I am concerned about that. So in 2002, in the UK, we formed a charity. It's called Caring for Ex-Offenders. It's about aftercare. It's not rocket science, really. I stole it from William Booth, who's the founder of the Salvation Army. He had a thing called the Gate Brigade, where he would turn up with a horse-drawn carriage. He'd stop outside the workhouses, and he'd pick these men and women up, and outside the prisons who were through in the gutter, he'd put them on the back of the wagon, and he'd do his famous 3 S's, which was soup, soap, and salvation. So he'd feed them, clothe them, and then give them a gospel presentation. And I thought, you know what? We can do that now. So through volunteers all over the UK and around the world, we meet men and women at the prison when they're released. We have a network, and we find out when they're coming out. We meet them at the gate. We take them to a church, and we ask that church to nurture them, look after them through training, find them employment and accommodation, and integrate them back into society.
So they all have a community to come to.
Yeah. Because otherwise they come out the gate and someone else will meet them from their old community.
Well, much like your need out of a broken life and home, the Army became a family for you.
The Army met me at the gate, really, that sort of thing,
and this is what the church needs to be for these men and women.
Well, the church has to do it. You know, as a pastor, it's I don't think there's any discussion about it, really. It's part of our remit. Christ talked about it all the time. You know, prisons and aftercare. It's all in the Bible, really, if you look through it, about meeting your brother or your sister, helping them, the orphans, the widows, the ex-offenders, the drug addicts, the alcoholics, and especially if they've come to Christ.
And what's the third one? The third aspect of
what I'm doing
of Alpha's expansion. It's so
well, you know, the whole
exciting
thing's called social transformation. I look after an amazing team of about 28 staff. And we look after all these aspects of what you're talking about. And the other one that came out, we started Alpha for the forces, Alpha for the military. Again, just supporting padres and chaplains especially on operations where these men and women are in positions where they may not come back. They might make the ultimate sacrifice, and we all know that now. It's in the news. You know, young men and women who've been thrown into war situations, have not been brought up in a godly environment, like me, don't know a lot about God. We're supporting chaplains in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and all over the world with the Alpha program. We've tweaked it and changed it a little bit and made it fit into a military environment, and again, it's, you know, just working with the guys.
It's just tremendous. I found out after the fact, much after the fact, that two people in my family circle did some meaningful time in Alpha programs, and it was transformational. You know, they've just referred to Bible study or... I didn't realize it was Alpha. I'm sure for most people watching, they know something about Alpha. They'll see on the church marquee, typically January, April, September, programs start up. The food is amazing. It always involves food.
Always food. Well, the Bible's full of food. Jesus always seemed to be eating, didn't he? Which is great.
But why else has this worked so well?
Well, you know, I can only say from my point of view, because I went through it in '94, and it's just, it's non-pressurized. It's an introduction to the Christian faith, and I knew nothing. I mean, some people know a lot more. So sometimes it reawakens them, it answers questions sometimes that they haven't had time in their lives to discuss.
And any question goes? Anything
goes. You can, and boy did I ask some questions, because I knew nothing. I was from a standing start. So it's just non-pressurized. You know, it's 15 sessions, it's based over 12 weeks, over 10 weeks. Like you said, there's a bit of food, there's a bit of chat at the end of it, and you can just ask what you want, you know.
Conversational.
It's conversational, and then you come back next week if you want, and who's Jesus, why did he die, how can I be sure of my faith, a bit about the Bible, you know, the church, good and evil, stuff that you really want to know about anyway. All
and a great sense of community. And
a sense of community, and you meet people like yourself, you know, so it's, I think it's fun, obviously, it's great, and it's a great way to learn. And if you don't want to continue with it at the end, then that's fine. But at least you'll be a little bit more informed.
You don't have to show up for all the weeks.
You don't have to show up. You miss the food if you do, but you don't have to show up.
Isn't it wonderful to see how God has used everything in your life to make you a change agent globally?
Well, yeah. Well, you know, we're meant to be, I guess, carriers of hope, aren't we? And if I can try and give someone some hope, like I was given hope, I think the Bible says, doesn't it, hope deferred makes the heart sick. If you haven't got hope, then I don't know what you do, you're really lost. So the idea, I think we're meant to be hope carriers, aren't we?
Absolutely.
Come on, we can do this stuff, you can change.
Absolutely, and I love Hebrews 13, verse 3, highlighted here. Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners.
Amen.
This is your message to churches. You want to involve church leaders, lay people in the church, in the growth of this program.
Yeah, and it's scary stuff, you know, and pastors, senior pastors, church leaders are busy people. I mean, they've got a lot on, and this is another thing. But I tell you, it's changed our church, you know, and the churches that are involved in the UK, we've got about 600 linked in to the charity. They bring an essence into the church, these men and women who know what it is to be saved, know what it is to be rescued, and they want to give back, but they need help. And the churches need help, and we need to help the churches, so we do training events as well to get them ready. You know, because the guy or the girl's scared about going into the church, and I think sometimes the church is scared of them coming in. So that's not a really great situation. So we need to make both comfortable and do it properly, you know, and professionally, and deal with the statutory organisations and everything that we're supposed to do. But you know what? We can do it. We can do it.
You very evidently are doing it. Wonderful, Paul. And if you are interested, your church, maybe you're a pastor watching today, would you log on to our website? We want to give you the connection to Paul, to Alpha moving in all these wonderful ways. Alpha for prisons, caring for ex-offenders, and Alpha for forces. God bless you, Paul.
Thank you.
All you're doing.